Selling on Takealot, the good, the bad, and the ugly about the book Selling on Takealot is often presented as an easy way to grow an online business. With its established customer base, trusted brand, and nationwide logistics, it looks like the perfect opportunity for anyone wanting to sell at scale. This book exists because the full story is rarely told. Selling on Takealot, the good, the bad, and the ugly is not a motivational guide, a shortcut to success, or a promise of profit. It is a real account of what selling on the platform actually looks like, including the wins, the frustrations, and the parts that most people only learn after losing money. This book is written for current sellers, aspiring sellers, and anyone considering Takealot as part of their e-commerce journey. It is especially for those who want clarity instead of hype, and honesty instead of encouragement. If you are looking for guarantees, overnight success, or someone to convince you that everything will work out, this book is not for you. If you want to understand the system clearly, this book will help you decide whether to start, stay, scale, diversify, or leave with your eyes open. About the author. The author is a wife, a mother of 2 daughters, and an entrepreneur who understands what it means to balance ambition with real life. Her journey into business was not linear, glamorous, or carefully planned. It was shaped by circumstance, responsibility, and the need to build something sustainable while managing multiple roles at once. She holds an LLB degree, a diploma in medical technology, and certificates in marketing management, and is currently completing her master's degree. Her background reflects both structured academic training and practical problem solving, giving her a grounded and analytical approach to business. Over the years, her experience has extended across corporate learning environments and hands-on entrepreneurship. She has sold products on platforms such as Takealot, Macro, and Amazon, while also running her own e-commerce website and marketing products through Facebook and Instagram. Like many sellers, her journey has included wins, losses, uncertainty, and moments that forced her to rethink everything she thought she understood about online selling. This book was written during one of those moments. It was written while navigating motherhood, managing a household, and trying to grow a business in an environment that is often simplified online, but far more complex in practice. The author's experience is not based on theory, trends, or what should work. It is based on what actually happened, financially, emotionally, and operationally. The author has chosen to write anonymously, not to hide, but to keep the focus where it belongs, on the system, the lessons, and the reality of selling on large online marketplaces. The intention is not to build a personal brand, but to provide honest insight that can help other sellers make informed decisions. This book is not an attack on any platform, nor is it an attempt to discourage entrepreneurship. It is a reflection written from experience for those who want clarity rather than hype, and understanding rather than motivation. Disclaimer. This book is based on the author's personal experiences as an online seller. The information shared reflects what the author encountered at the time of selling and writing, and should not be interpreted as legal, financial, tax, or business advice. Online marketplaces, including Takealot, regularly change their policies, fees, systems, and requirements. What applied at one point may no longer apply in the future. Readers are encouraged to conduct their own research and, where necessary, consult qualified professionals before making business decisions. The author does not guarantee results, profits, or outcomes. Selling online involves risk, and each seller's experience will differ depending on products, pricing, timing, and circumstances. This book is intended to provide insight, awareness, and practical lessons, not promises. Introduction. Why I wrote this book. The year I was introduced to online marketplaces was the same year I became a mother. Life changed quickly. Shopping was no longer spontaneous or simple. Planning mattered. Energy was limited. Then COVID arrived, and fear became part of everyday decision-making. Shopping malls felt unsafe. Standing in queues felt risky. Going out with an infant required courage, planning, and emotional energy that I didn't always have. Online shopping became a solution. During that time, Takealot dominated. It delivered essentials. It was reliable when physical shopping felt overwhelming. It worked. At some point, my thinking shifted. I began to wonder what it would look like to move from being a customer to becoming a supplier. Not just to sell products, but to help other parents and households access what they needed during a difficult time. That question stayed with me longer than I expected. At first, it was just curiosity. I didn't immediately see myself as a business owner or a seller. I was still very much in survival mode, figuring out motherhood, navigating uncertainty, and trying to make sense of a world that felt unstable. But the idea kept coming back. If I was relying so heavily on online shopping, surely there were thousands of other households doing the same. I started looking at Takealot differently, not just as a place to buy things, but as a system, a marketplace, a bridge between people who needed products and people who supplied them. That's when I started asking practical questions. How do people sell on Takealot? Who are these sellers? Are they big companies or ordinary people like me? Is there space for a small business, or is it already too crowded? What stood out was how professional the platform looked from the outside. Everything felt structured, clear, legitimate. It didn't feel like a risky internet hustle. It felt like a real business environment, even for someone starting small. That perception gave me the confidence to explore it further. I didn't approach it with expectations of quick money or overnight success. I approached it cautiously, trying to understand how the system worked and whether participation was even possible for someone in my position. That was the moment I stepped into the world of online marketplaces, not fully aware of what was ahead, but curious enough to try. And that decision is where this story really begins. Part 1. The Good. Chapter 1. Why Takealot is attractive. Takealot makes sense, especially at the beginning. From the outside, it looks like the perfect place to start an online business. The traffic is already there. Customers already trust the platform. You are not trying to convince people to buy from an unknown website or a brand they have never heard of. Takealot has already done that work. At the time I was considering selling online, that mattered to me a lot. I was not in a position where I could afford to experiment endlessly or take big risks. I needed something that felt structured and legitimate. Takealot didn't feel like a side hustle platform. It felt like a real business environment, even for someone starting small. Another thing that made Takealot attractive was the logistics. The idea that storage, delivery, and customer reach were already handled felt like a huge advantage. As someone juggling motherhood and everyday responsibilities, the promise of not having to personally manage deliveries to customers sounded appealing. It made the idea of selling at scale feel possible, even without a large team or warehouse. There was also comfort in the brand itself. Takealot was already part of my daily life as a customer. I had used it, trusted it, and relied on it. That familiarity made the transition from buyer to potential seller feel less intimidating. It felt easier to step into a system I already understood from the outside. What also stood out was how professional everything looked. The website, the seller portal, the documentation, everything appeared clear and organized. For someone new to online selling, that level of structure created confidence. It suggested that there was a process to follow and that success was possible if you followed the rules. At that stage, I wasn't thinking about competition, fees, or long-term sustainability. I was focused on possibility, on access, on the idea that this platform could open doors to something bigger than what I could build on my own at the time. And in many ways, that perception wasn't wrong. Takealot is attractive because it lowers the barrier to entry. It gives small sellers access to a massive customer base and the opportunity to participate in a system that already works. For someone starting out, that can feel empowering. This is the part people see first, and it's why so many people start. Chapter 2. First wins feel amazing. Once I decided to explore selling on Takealot, the process became real very quickly. Before I could even be approved as a seller, I had to create a product catalog. This was a requirement at the time. I couldn't simply apply and figure things out later. I had to already know what I planned to sell, how it would be categorized, and what it might look like on the platform. That step alone forced me to think seriously. I wasn't just browsing ideas anymore. I was making decisions. I had to choose products without knowing whether my application would even be accepted. It felt like planning a business before being allowed through the door. At that stage, I was still guided by what made sense to my life. I was interested in baby products, maternity bags, and toys. These were products I understood, products I had used, products I could imagine helping other mothers with. Nothing felt random. Everything felt connected to where I was in my life at the time. After submitting the catalog and completing the registration process, I waited. A few days later, I received confirmation that I had been accepted as a seller. It's hard to explain how validating that felt. I remember thinking that it must be because I already had a registered business, which was one of the requirements at the time. Whatever the reason, the approval felt like permission to begin, like I had crossed an invisible line from observer to participant. Even though I hadn't sold a single product yet, the excitement was real. I logged into the seller portal, clicked through the dashboards, and tried to understand what everything meant. It all felt official. It felt like the start of something. Those early moments matter more than people realize. They give you momentum before reality sets in. They make you believe that this could work. And sometimes, that belief is what pushes you to take the next step, even when you're unsure. That was my first win. Not the money, not the sales, but the feeling that I was finally in. Chapter 3. Product sourcing for the first time. Once I was approved as a seller, the next question became unavoidable. Where was I actually going to get the products from? Like many beginners, my first instinct was Alibaba. It seemed like the obvious place. Everyone talked about it. The prices looked good on the surface, and the range was endless. I spent hours scrolling, comparing, imagining what could work. Then I started calculating properly. Once shipping costs were added, things stopped making sense. The fees were high, unpredictable, and in some cases almost as expensive as the products themselves. When I compared those landed costs to the selling prices on Takealot, the margins were either very small or non-existent. In some cases, I would have been selling just to break even, or worse, to lose money. That scared me. I wasn't doing this for fun. I needed it to make sense financially, even if the profits were small at the beginning. That's when I remembered China Mall in Johannesburg. I had been there before as a shopper. I knew there were suppliers selling a wide range of products, some of surprisingly good quality. But the idea of going back for business reasons brought a wave of doubt. It was far. My car was small. Johannesburg intimidated me. All those thoughts flooded my head at once. But I also knew that if I didn't go and see for myself, I would always wonder whether I had missed an opportunity. So I pushed past the fear and decided to go anyway. Not to buy everything, but to research properly. Walking through China Mall with a different mindset changed everything. I wasn't browsing anymore. I was observing. I was touching products, checking quality, comparing prices, and thinking about what could realistically work on Takealot. I was asking questions. I was paying attention. That's when I saw cot bumpers. They immediately made sense to me. I had used them myself. I knew the quality. I knew how useful they were for parents. I had even bought them on Takealot before. So when I checked the prices at China Mall and compared them to the selling prices on Takealot, something finally added up. For the first time, the margins made sense. The product was relatively affordable, the quality was good, and the Takealot selling price left room for profit, even after fees. I remember thinking, this actually works. That was the moment I decided to take my first real step. I didn't buy a huge quantity. I bought 10 cot bumpers. Just 10. Enough to test, enough to learn, and enough to limit my risk if things went wrong. Those 10 units were my first ever products sold on Takealot. After that purchase, the learning curve kicked in again. I had to go back into the onboarding process, learn how to prepare stock properly, understand the packaging requirements, print labels, complete the necessary paperwork, and figure out how to ship the products to Takealot. It was not quick, it was not simple. It was a long journey of learning, but I did it. At that time, Takealot did not offer seller collection services. I had to find my own courier to deliver the stock to their distribution center. One good thing about Takealot, especially for beginners, is that their onboarding process is clear and easy to understand. Even when it feels overwhelming, the information is there if you take the time to read it. Eventually, my stock was shipped. When the products arrived and went live on the platform, the feeling was unreal. Seeing something I sourced, packaged, and shipped myself displayed for sale on Takealot felt like a real achievement. But reality followed quickly. The products did not sell as fast as I expected. I think I only sold 1 or 2 units at the beginning. When month end came, Takealot deducted their monthly service fees from those earnings. The payout took time, and by the time the money reached me, there wasn't much left. It took me a while to understand why the product wasn't moving. What I didn't know at the time was that other sellers were selling the same product at much lower prices than what I had researched initially. With my pricing, it became almost impossible to compete. While my stock sat in the warehouse, storage fees started kicking in, month after month. That was my first product. It taught me lessons I could not have learned any other way. Chapter 4: Pricing, Fees, and the Illusion of Profit. When my first products finally went live on Takealot, I felt a sense of achievement I hadn't felt in a long time. I remember refreshing the page just to see them there. Something I had sourced, paid for, packaged, and shipped was now listed on a major online platform. It made everything feel real. But excitement doesn't last long when money gets involved. The first few sales came slowly. I think I sold 1 unit, maybe 2. Each sale felt encouraging at the time, but I didn't yet understand what was happening behind the scenes. When month end came, Takealot deducted the monthly service fees from the earnings. The payout took time to reach me, and when it finally did, the amount was much smaller than I expected. What looked like progress on the dashboard didn't translate into meaningful money in my account. That's when confusion set in. I started asking myself questions I hadn't asked before. Why wasn't the product selling faster? Why did the money feel like it disappeared so quickly? Where was I miscalculating? It took time for the answers to become clear. What I hadn't fully understood yet was pricing pressure. I had done research, but my research was incomplete. Other sellers were selling the same product at prices much lower than what I had planned for. At those prices, competing didn't just mean earning less, it meant losing money. My stock sat in the warehouse, and while it sat there, storage fees started adding up, quietly, month after month. Nothing dramatic happened, but the cost was there, accumulating in the background. This was my first real introduction to how selling on Takealot actually works. It wasn't enough to have a good product. It wasn't enough to source at a reasonable price. It wasn't enough to make a sale. Every product had to justify its place on the platform. If it didn't move, it cost you money. If it moved too slowly, it cost you money. And if you priced it wrong, it didn't move at all. That's when I realized that profit on Takealot is not obvious. What you see on the front end, listings, prices, sales, is only part of the story. The real numbers reveal themselves later, after fees, after deductions, and after time has passed. This chapter was not about failure. It was about adjustment. I was still early in the journey, still learning how the system worked, and still believing that with better understanding, things could improve. And they did, but not without more lessons along the way. Chapter 5. When it works, it really works. As time passed, I started introducing more products into my Takealot catalog. By this stage, I wasn't guessing as much as I was observing. I was paying attention to what moved, what didn't, and how small changes affected performance. I tested different products and slowly started understanding the rhythm of the platform. Then something shifted. The toys I listed started selling, and not slowly. Orders came in consistently. It got to a point where I had to go to China Mall almost every second day just to restock. What once felt like an experiment started feeling like momentum. This is one of the biggest strengths of Takealot. If you get the right product at the right price, the traffic is already there. You're not trying to convince people to trust you or discover your store. Customers are already on the platform, already searching, already buying. Your job is to meet that demand correctly. And when that happens, the results can be surprising. Chapter 6. The fees you don't feel at first. The bad part of selling on Takealot doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't come with a warning email or a sudden shock. It arrives quietly, in small pieces, usually after you've already started believing that things are working. By the time you realize what's happening, you're already inside the system. Let me explain the bad part the way it actually happens, not the way it's written in a fee schedule. Picture this. You've chosen your product. You've packaged it properly. You've followed the onboarding instructions carefully. Now you need to get that product to Takealot. You book a courier and ship your stock to their distribution center. That is already a cost. You pay it without thinking too much about it because it feels normal. It feels like part of doing business. Your stock arrives at Takealot. Depending on where you are based and how Takealot allocates inventory, your products don't always stay in one place. They may need to be distributed across different distribution centers. If you're based in Johannesburg and stock needs to go to Cape Town, that movement costs money. If you're in Durban and stock needs to move elsewhere, that also costs money. The size and weight of your product suddenly matter a lot more than they did on paper. At this stage, nothing feels wrong yet, but sometimes stock arrives damaged, not necessarily because you packed it badly, but because logistics are not perfect. Boxes are moved, stacked, and handled multiple times. When this happens, your stock may be rejected or placed into an exception process. Now you're faced with another decision. Do you have the stock returned to you? If you do, you pay courier fees again. Another cost, another delay. Let's say the stock is received successfully and goes live. When your first sale happens, it feels good. You see the notification, you feel progress. But this is where the fees begin to reveal themselves. On every item sold, there are fulfillment-related charges. There is a picking fee, there is a packing fee, there is a delivery fee. No matter how small your item is, these fees do not disappear. There is a minimum amount that applies to every sale, regardless of your product price. This is where small items become dangerous. You might think cheaper products are safer, but the fees can take a much bigger percentage of your profit than you expect. This is why bundling becomes important. Selling items together allows you to spread those fees across one sale instead of several. Then there is storage. If your stock moves quickly, storage fees don't hurt much. But when products slow down, storage fees quietly accumulate. Day by day, month by month. Your stock is sitting there, and every day it costs you money. Eventually, you reach a point where keeping the stock becomes more expensive than selling it. That's when you start thinking about removing it. Removing stock from Takealot is possible, but it is not free. You pay courier fees again. You pay to move your own stock out of the system. Once again, the cost is yours. Returns make this even harder. Takealot is a very customer-centric platform, and from a buyer's perspective, that is a good thing. Returns are easy, customers are protected. But for sellers, returns can undo progress very quickly. A product can sell, generate revenue, and then come back used, damaged, or unsellable. The sale is reversed, the money disappears, and you're left deciding whether to take the stock back or continue paying storage fees. Even internal stock movements come with costs. If one distribution center runs out of stock and another still has units, Takealot may move that stock internally to fulfill an order. That movement is charged to you. By the time you add everything up, something becomes clear. Selling on Takealot is not expensive in one dramatic way. It is expensive in many small, continuous ways. Each fee on its own feels manageable. Together, they can quietly erase profit if you are not paying close attention. This is why many sellers feel confused. Sales are happening, but the money doesn't feel like it matches the effort. It's not because the platform is broken, it's because the cost of being in the system never stops. You can make money on Takealot, but you are always paying to be there. That is the bad part. Chapter 7: Pricing Wars, Buy Boxes, and Ads. There comes a point where you realize that selling on Takealot is not just about having stock available. It's about being able to react and react quickly. Pricing is not something you set once and forget. It changes constantly, sometimes dramatically, sometimes by as little as 1 rand. And that 1 rand can be the difference between selling consistently or not selling at all. At first, this is confusing. You log into the system, your product is live, everything looks fine, yet sales slow down. When you investigate, you realize another seller has dropped their price slightly. Not enough to look aggressive, but enough to win the buy box. This is where the buy box becomes critical. The buy box is where the sale happens. If you're not winning it, your visibility drops. You're still listed, but you are no longer the default option. Most customers do not scroll far enough to compare sellers. They buy what is presented first. Many sellers do not manage pricing manually. They use external pricing tools and buy box software that automatically adjusts prices in real time. These tools integrate directly with Takealot and allow sellers to remain competitive without constantly monitoring listings. If you don't know about these tools, you are already behind. This is where pricing stops feeling strategic and starts feeling exhausting. Sponsored ads add another layer. Ads can push your product to the top of search results and help you reach sales targets. Sometimes ads are the only reason a product sells at all. But ads cost money, and that cost can be significant. There were days when sponsored ads ate up half of my profit margins. Without ads, sales slowed down. With ads, profits shrank. It became a constant balancing act. And then there's the part people really don't talk about. Eventually, you realize you're not only competing with other sellers. Sometimes you're competing with your own supplier. This happened to me while I was selling receiving blankets. They were moving well. Sales were consistent. I felt confident. I understood the demand, my pricing made sense, and restocking felt manageable. Then one day, while monitoring my listing, I noticed a new seller. The price was lower than mine. Not drastically lower, but enough to affect sales. When I clicked to see who the seller was, I laughed. It was my supplier. The same place I was sourcing from was now selling directly on Takealot. At first, it felt unreal. I was doing everything right, and suddenly I was competing with the source itself. That's when reality set in. Suppliers have an advantage sellers do not. They buy at lower costs. They don't rely on reseller margins. They can afford to undercut you and still make money. At that point, competing on price stops making sense. You can lower your price again and again, but you are fighting a battle you cannot win. You are protecting margins while someone else is comfortable reducing them. That was the moment I knew I had to move on. Not adjust, not negotiate, move. Some products are not meant to be fought over. When suppliers enter the platform directly, it usually means the window for resellers is closing. You either change strategy, differentiate, or walk away. This experience taught me something important. Pricing competition is not always about other sellers like you. Sometimes it is structural. Sometimes the supply chain itself shifts. And when that happens, staying too long can cost more than leaving early. Knowing when to exit a product is just as important as knowing when to enter one. Chapter 8. When the system can be brutal. The ugly part of selling on Takealot is not loud. It doesn't arrive with warnings or announcements. It shows up quietly, usually when you've already built some momentum and started relying on the platform working the way it has been. This is where selling stops feeling exciting and starts feeling heavy. One of the first things that makes it feel that way is lead times. On paper, lead times make sense. Customers expect fast delivery, and platforms need reliability to function properly. But in reality, lead times leave very little room for real-life situations. You can do everything right. You can prepare your stock on time, book your courier on time, and hand everything over exactly as required. But if you're using an external courier, especially during peak seasons, delays happen. Couriers get overwhelmed, routes get backed up, systems slow down. When that happens, none of the context matters. Late is late. It doesn't matter that you booked correctly. It doesn't matter that the delay wasn't your fault. Once stock arrives outside the expected window, your lead times are affected. Sometimes they are switched off completely. When that happens, your listings suffer immediately. Sales slow down, visibility drops, momentum disappears. And when you try to get help, support can feel distant. You explain what happened, but the system doesn't debate. It responds. This is when selling starts to feel impersonal. You stop feeling like a partner and start feeling like a number in a system that doesn't bend. Another ugly reality is understanding how exposed you actually are as a seller. Your account can be suspended, and it can be permanently terminated. This isn't something people like to think about, but it's real. High return rates on a particular product can trigger scrutiny, even if you believed the product was good, even if you sourced carefully. Too many returns don't just affect a listing, they can affect your entire account. Sourcing becomes risky in ways people don't always expect. If you sell products that are not your own brand, especially products sourced from China or informal suppliers, you carry the responsibility of proving legitimacy. If a brand claim is raised, you may be asked to provide invoices showing where the products came from. Sometimes, even when you provide invoices, they are rejected. They may not meet internal requirements. The supplier may not be recognized as official, and at that point, intention doesn't matter. Compliance does. This is where chasing sales without deep research can backfire badly. Some products look generic, some appear unbranded, some sell extremely well, but they may still belong to registered brands somewhere in the world. Selling them without proper authorization can result in counterfeit or intellectual property claims. Those claims can end everything. There is also the issue of multiple accounts. Opening more than one seller account for any reason is strictly prohibited. Some sellers do this unknowingly. Others do it thinking it will help them manage risk. If detected, accounts can be permanently terminated. And when termination or suspension happens, the shock doesn't stop there. The funds in your account can be frozen. Not for a week, not for a month, but for up to 90 days, and sometimes even longer. This is done to protect the platform against potential returns or disputes. During that time, you have no access to your money. It doesn't matter how much it is. For sellers who have put everything into the platform, this can be devastating. This is why depending on one platform alone is dangerous. Selling on Takealot can make sense. It can be profitable. But it works best when it is part of a bigger plan, not the plan itself. The ugly truth is not that the system is unfair. It's that the system is strict. And once you understand that, You can decide how close you want to stand to it. Chapter 9: Seller Capital, Frozen Funds, and the Final Reality. There comes a stage where selling on Takealot starts to feel bigger than just products and orders. Once you've shown consistency, steady sales, regular payouts, and predictable performance, new opportunities are introduced. One of those is seller capital. On the surface, seller capital looks like support. If you're doing well and showing potential, Takealot makes it possible for you to access funding to grow. For a small business, this can feel like validation. It feels like the platform believes in you. It feels like help. And to be fair, seller capital can change lives. It allows you to buy more stock, restock faster, and scale beyond what your own cash flow might allow. For sellers who understand their numbers and move carefully, it can unlock growth that would otherwise take years. But this is where things become complicated. Although the terms are technically available in contracts and documents, the practical reality is not always as clear as it seems at first glance. What looks straightforward in an email can feel very different once deductions start reflecting in your payouts. At one point, I realized that the amount being deducted weekly was much higher than I had anticipated. In some cases, the amount taken was far above what I believed I had agreed to mentally when reading the initial communication. While everything was technically covered in the fine print, the way it played out in real life felt heavy, especially for a growing business. This wasn't about blame, it was about impact. Weekly deductions affect cash flow, and when deductions fluctuate depending on performance, it becomes harder to plan. What looks manageable one week can feel overwhelming the next. I couldn't help but compare this experience to earlier funding providers, where repayment structures felt more predictable and transparent. This experience felt different, not necessarily wrong, but harder to fully anticipate unless you were already deeply familiar with how the system works. This is where sellers need to slow down. Funding is not free money. It ties you tighter to the platform. It increases dependence. And when combined with all the other fees, returns, and operational risks, it adds pressure. Then there is the part people rarely talk about openly: account suspension and termination. Selling on Takealot means operating inside a strict system. Rules matter. Metrics matter. Compliance matters. And when something goes wrong, whether through returns, claims, operational errors, or misunderstandings, consequences can be severe. Accounts can be suspended, and in some cases, permanently terminated. When that happens, funds held by the platform are frozen. This is done to cover potential returns or disputes. From a system perspective, it makes sense. From a seller's perspective, it can feel brutal. Money you've earned becomes inaccessible for months. This is why relying on one platform alone is risky. No matter how well things are going, no matter how confident you feel, you are still operating within someone else's system. That system has rules, protections, and processes that prioritize the platform first. This doesn't mean selling on Takealot is bad. It means it must be approached with awareness. Seller capital can help you grow. The platform can help you scale. But nothing replaces having a backup plan. The final reality is this: Takealot can be powerful, profitable, and efficient, but only when you understand exactly what you're trading convenience for. That understanding is what separates sellers who survive from sellers who struggle. Final chapter: what I wish I knew before I started. If I could go back to the beginning, I wouldn't tell myself not to sell on Takealot. I would still start, but I would start with a different mindset. What I wish I knew then is that Takealot is not a shortcut. It is a system, and like any system, it rewards understanding more than effort. You can work hard, stay consistent, and still struggle if you don't fully understand how the platform actually works beneath the surface. In the beginning, excitement can make you blind. Every approval feels like a win. Every listing feels like progress. Every sale feels like confirmation that you're doing something right. And those feelings matter. They give you momentum. They push you forward. But they can also stop you from asking the hard questions early enough. I wish I knew that Takealot does not respond to effort, intention, or struggle. It responds to metrics: lead times, pricing, availability, returns, compliance. The platform doesn't slow down because you're learning. It doesn't bend because life happens. Once you enter the system, you are expected to perform at the system's pace. That isn't personal. That's just how it works. I also wish I understood sooner that sales are not profit. Seeing orders come in feels good, but profit only shows itself after everything else has been deducted: fees, ads, returns, storage, time, and mistakes. If you don't sit with your numbers regularly, the platform will teach you the lesson in a way that hurts. Not loudly, quietly, over time. I wish I knew that not every product deserves loyalty. Some products work for a while. Some work until competition shifts. Some work until suppliers enter the platform themselves. When that happens, staying too long can cost you more than leaving early. Walking away is not failure. Sometimes it's discipline. And it's important to say this clearly, because pretending otherwise would be dishonest. People do make serious money on Takealot. There are sellers making millions on the platform. Not in theory, not just on social media, in real life. It happens when the right products, the right pricing, the right systems, and the right scale come together. Making millions on Takealot is possible, but it is not accidental. It is strategic. It is disciplined, and it usually comes after a long period of learning, losing, adjusting, and staying in the game long enough to understand how the system truly works. That truth deserves to exist alongside the warnings. I also wish I understood the risk of dependence earlier. Takealot can be powerful. It can generate real income. It can change your life, but it should never be your only plan. Systems change. Rules tighten. Accounts get reviewed. Things happen that are completely out of your control. Having a backup is not pessimism. It is protection. The ugly truth is that selling on Takealot can be brutal at times. Not because the platform is evil, not because sellers are set up to fail, but because it is a large, structured system designed to protect itself first. Once you accept that, the relationship changes. You stop expecting fairness in an emotional sense and start operating with clarity. You stop taking things personally. You learn when to push, when to pause, and when to step back. That is where maturity as a seller begins. This book was never written to scare you. It was written to prepare you. Selling on Takealot can work. It can be profitable. It can scale beyond what you imagined, but only if you go in with your eyes open, your numbers tight, and your expectations grounded. If this book helps you start smarter, move more carefully, or make one decision that protects your business, then it has done what it was meant to do. Nothing more, nothing less.